past 10 years is heavily focused on using facts, clues, evidence, and data to measure the impact of training and learning. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I'm going to spend about 10 minutes talking to you about how I measure the impact of training and learning and talent development, and how I use data and analytics and facts and clues and evidence to do that as the L&D detective. All right. So I'd like to begin by sharing with you my definition of impact. And I believe it's important for me to share this definition with you up front, because this definition sets the context for how I think about measuring impact. And when I think about collecting data and facts and evidence and clues as the L&D detective, I am looking for facts, evidence, data, and clues that shows the extent to which training and learning is activating performance and activating business goals. So I want you to remember this definition because it is the context and the framework and the perspective that you'll want to have and that I use as I go forward in this presentation this morning. I want to share first with you my guiding principles. As the L&D detective, I do have 5 guiding principles. And this is how I work, this is how I think, and this is how I collect facts, clues, evidence, and data for the impact of training and learning. This is the foundation for the work that I do when I'm collecting data that shows how training and learning is impacting and activating performance and behavior. So guiding principle number 1 is all about performance. Again, I believe that learning and development fulfills its highest purpose when it is activating performance. So guiding principle number 1 is all about performance. And then guiding principle number 2, impact is intentional, it's specific, it's purposeful, which means there has to be a plan for impact in the beginning. And that leads us to L&D detective guiding principle number 3. And that is, if you don't plan for impact in the beginning, trust me when I tell you it's going to be difficult to measure in the end. It's going to be difficult to collect data in the end if you don't plan for it in the front end. Guiding principle number 4, if you can find one thing about a person's behavior or actions or performance that helps you determine whether or not training or learning impacted anything at all, then that will ultimately lead to the facts about impact. So that's guiding principle number 4. Guiding principle number 5 is probably my favorite one. Collecting facts, clues, evidence, and data for the impact of training and learning may not be easy, but it is absolutely possible. And I'm going to show you what makes it possible today. I do have standards when I am doing an impact investigation and when I'm collecting facts, clues, evidence, and data that shows the extent to which training and learning is activating performance and behavior. So I'm just going to go ahead and share with you what those 6 impact standards are. So here's how I use these impact standards. If someone comes to me and says, "Hey, L&D detective, can you measure the impact of this training program for us?" Well, the first thing I'm going to do is ask them these 6 questions. If they can't answer these 6 questions, then I'm probably not going to try to collect data or measure impact, because these standards are what we use to determine whether or not a training or a learning solution has been intentionally and purposely designed to activate performance and to activate business goals. So before I do anything at all, before I even try to measure impact, before I even try to look for data, I'm going to ask the question, or rather, I'm going to ask these 6 questions, because these 6 questions will let me know whether or not training or learning has met the minimum criteria for investigating impact and for looking for data. And so this is a very important piece, a very important part of the work that I do as the L&D detective. Quite often, I am asked what makes measuring impact difficult, what makes measuring impact hard. And it's really going back to principle number 3. If you don't plan for impact in the beginning, it's going to be difficult to measure in the end. So I want to share with you my L&D secret, my L&D detective secret for how you can proactively plan for impact in the beginning. I have developed 9 questions that are important for you to ask business partners and stakeholders when they come to you and request training. These 9 questions, I like to call them the 9 C's. These 9 questions give you the information that you need in order to design a training or learning solution with intention, specificity, and purpose for impacting performance, behavior, actions, and business goals. So going back to this question, what makes measuring impact for training and learning difficult? What my experience tells me is that what makes it difficult is when you don't have this information. These 9 questions are guaranteed to help you design a training program or a learning solution with intention and purpose for impacting behavior, actions, or performance. So these 9 questions are going to give you what you need to design appropriately. And it is also important to ask these questions before you design your training solution, before it is deployed, before it is launched. So these are 9 important questions in order to get ready to measure impact using facts, clues, evidence, and most important, data. After you have the answers to those questions, you then have the decision tree that you see here that helps you determine what to do next. Because the reality is that sometimes training and learning is the solution, sometimes it's not. Sometimes we have to build something new, sometimes we don't, because we may already have the solution. Then there are times where we may need to build something on our own. We may need to purchase a vendor solution, or we may need to take a hybrid approach to do both. But it's important for us to be clear about next steps for whether or not we need to build a learning solution before we move on to actually building it. And that's what this decision tree helps us do. So what I am doing now, what I just did actually, was set the stage to get ready for what we're going to really be talking about today, and that is data. Data to show the extent to which training and learning is measurably impacting performance, behavior, and actions. And there are 3 types of data that I take a look at. The first kind of data that I take a look at is learning performance data. And learning performance data is the data that we get from things like learning surveys, from our learning management systems, from the different ways in which people are engaging in learning in the learning ecosystem. Are they watching videos? Are they listening to podcasts? Are they taking e-learning courses? So that's data that I gather to show impact. And I'm gathering that data as part of looking at facts, clues, evidence, and data for learning performance. The other data that I'm taking a look at is business performance data. And the business performance data shows how the business is performing in terms of its goals, in terms of its strategies, right? So I'm looking at learning performance data and I'm looking at business performance data. And then the third kind of data that I am looking at to measure impact is people performance data. So this shows how people are actually executing in their roles, how they are working in their roles. So I'm going to show you some examples of each one of these so that you know what they are in terms of data. So here's an example of learning performance data. This is the result of a learning survey. And what we are able to get from this learning survey is an estimate of the extent to which we can expect performance to change. I believe that learning survey data is best when it focuses on giving us data back that helps us estimate the impact of training and learning. So this is an example of learning performance data that comes from a learning survey. When you think about evidence for impact, you want to be thinking about ways in which you can prove whether or not something will change as a result of training or learning. And I like to use test groups and control groups to do that. So when you have a test group, they are the group that gets the training, or sometimes they're called pilot groups. And then you have control groups, and those control groups are the groups that don't get the training. We aren't withholding it from them as a penalty or to punish them. It's just that we want to have 2 things that we can compare. So the test group gets the training, the control group does not. So I'm going to show you an example of people data using a test group and a control group. So in this example, there are some stores where they have a customer satisfaction rate of 35%. And they want to raise that, and they're going to use training to do that. So in the control group, which is the group that did not get the training, after the training was launched, their customer satisfaction rate went down to 30%. But the test group, which is the group that got the training, their customer satisfaction scores went up to 50%. So there's a 15% increase, and we can allocate some of that increase to training. So this is an example of people performance data and how you can use test groups and control groups for that data. The other type of data that we use is business performance data, and these are some examples here of what business performance data looks like and some of the business performance data that we can use to measure impact. What we're trying to do here, team, is make the connection between learning performance data, people performance data, and business performance data to answer the question, what is the impact of training and learning? So here's another example. For business performance data, we can compare and contrast the test group and the control group to see if there are any differences with how those two groups are performing. When we take a look at all of the facts, the clues, the evidence, and the data for learning performance and business performance and people performance, we are able to answer the question, what is the impact of training and learning? So as the L&D detective, this is where I'm focused. I'm focused on collecting the facts, the clues, the evidence, and the data that tells me whether or not training and learning is activating performance and business goals. I want to go back to this definition because, again, it is the ground floor. It is the foundation for all the work that I do. And I just went through a lot of information. I did it very quickly. I tried to stay in my 10 minutes, and I am at my 10 minutes now, so I think I was able to do that because I want to make sure that Peter has his 10 minutes as well. But I do want to leave something with you. I have a free gift for you. Write this web address down, kevinmyates.com. If you go to kevinmyates.com today, you can download a free copy of my new book, The L&D Detective Kit for Solving Impact Mysteries. And I talk about everything that I just shared with you today in detail and in depth. So, again, I only had 10 minutes today, and we're going to have a discussion, and I'll be able to talk more. But I want you to go out and get this free copy of The L&D Detective Kit for Solving Impact Mysteries. It's just for you. So make sure you write down kevinmyates.com. The web address is here. If you go there, you can download a free copy. Peter, I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend.
Yeah. Just a minute. Amazing. I've never heard someone talk about measuring the impact of learning and development with so much energy. Thanks so much, Kevin. I've put his web address in the chat, his website in the chat. So please go and
get your free copy.
Download the copy. Remember facts, clues, evidence, and data, and whether it's impacting performance and business data. So, Peter, if you can just come on now, and then we'll take the questions afterward.
Great. That's fantastic, Kelvin. I hope I can match up to you. Just 1 second now. Okay. So I'm going to share my slide now. Okay. All right. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Peter Bamkole, like I've said before, Director at Enterprise Development Center. And I'm going to be sharing a few thoughts around using data and artificial intelligence for learning. So can you hear me? Yeah, there's some noise at the background. Okay, last week.
Yes, you can.
Yes, okay. So last week, we had a great session on face-to-face for learning. And it was a whole week. And being together for 1 week, it was fantastic because you could almost tell how each person will react from learning, whatever you pose in terms of questions and things like that. But there were just 10 of us in the room. And so what I would like to ask you, despite, face-to-face learning being great, especially when you have great content and you have a great facilitator, what are the limitations? So I'm going to ask that we share a poll just now. I don't know if I need to stop sharing mine. Mary? Do I need to bring this down? My question is...
No.
We've got Neka here. I'm just going to hand over to Neka.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Baba. So, so for our listeners and the audience, at the extreme right-hand side, you'll see under Discuss, the chat button, you'll see polls. Please click on it, and the poll has already been uploaded, and then just, submit your vote. It's just one question, right, Banky?
Just one question, but I need to know. Oops, I need to know the answers just to get a feel.
To get a feel. Okay, so what will happen is that I'll ask the audience to submit their vote, and then I'll reach out to Ephraim at the back end to give me that data.
Fantastic.
Okay, so if you see the extreme left polls, sorry, the extreme right polls, click on just one question there and then submit your vote. There are 70 of us, so I'll just
let me know once you have the poll. Neka, how are we doing? Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, I need the results of the poll so that I can continue.
It's breaking a little bit at my end.
Okay, if it's taking long to get the result of the poll, I probably will just continue. Is that okay?
So, Banky, I just want to suggest you just continue while I get it from.
Okay.
Can you start without it for a little bit? Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so while we wait for that, there are a few things that goes on in the class when you are delivering face-to-face. The first thing is that a lot of data are generated constantly about the learners and what is happening. So the way they are learning, the way they are receiving things that you are facilitating, and so on and so forth. The way they even look at their co-learners and how they are processing to be able to give their own answers and to react. All that data is happening concurrently, and then those data are being generated. Now, the second thing that happens in the classroom is that these data are being acquired, stored, processed, and then retrieved when needed. Now, that is what the facilitator does each time. So when a facilitator is seeing a learner that is quiet, it means data is generated, the facilitator is seeing this learner and quickly processing on how to get the learner back into class, and so on and so forth. If a learner is disruptive, the data is generated, is processed, and then the facilitator gets that learner managed. Now, that is happening in the physical world, in the classroom. Now, as that is happening, we're having learning paths, preferences, styles. All of these are being profiled by the facilitator. And the facilitator is using all this data being generated to make his or her class a lot more fun, very engaging, and making sure that everybody learns very well. But that is in a manual form. Now, effective learning requires this data to be processed very quickly into information that is useful, but will then be used in a dynamic manner. That is what as human beings, we are not able to do effectively, no matter how good we are as a facilitator. Now comes AI. And there are 4 key areas that artificial intelligence is able to help us to be able to do this even better. The first is there are so many routine tasks that happens in the classroom, before, in the classroom, and after. Artificial intelligence gives us the opportunity to be able to be our learning assistants. Things that the facilitator cannot see, the learning assistant will detect immediately, process immediately, and give a feedback to the facilitator. Secondly, when you are in a class, the learners are learning differently. They are processing differently. But there is no way we can, as facilitators, be inside of these learners to know everything. Perhaps we can pick a few things, and with a lot of expertise, that may be read correctly. But the interesting thing is that with artificial intelligence, it is very, very possible to actually understand what is happening to every learner, and you can map your class. So you can know who's learning very fast, who is learning very slowly, and who is learning on the average. That's the second thing artificial intelligence may be able to do for us. The third one is that we can look at not just that class, but several classes, and we can see that a particular course that we are teaching, I'm having a lot of echo. Can everybody please mute? Thank you. So we have a lot of, if you have a course that is being taught across board, then it is possible for you to begin to see the reactions and the way in which different learners are accepting, absorbing this course. And so some elements of that course, you can easily know which one is the most difficult that you are teaching, that the learners are not learning very well. And so quickly, using artificial intelligence, you can then pull out only that portion and redesign it so that learning can become even more effective. And the final one is that now that we have gone virtual, most of us, it means that you can actually have a virtual facilitator that understands the class, that has mapped the class very well, and can process things 1,000,000 times faster than I can as a physical facilitator. And this facilitator can then be an AI one. But the question that keeps bothering the minds of facilitators like me, and indeed a number of my colleagues, is that will AI replace us as facilitators? What I would like you to do is to put that inside the chat box. I would like to hear your opinion around if AI can replace us as facilitators. Just to quickly put it in the chat box, and I'm going to go through that as we leave. I'm going to stop my slideshow briefly so that I can look and see the chat box as well. Okay, so I'm seeing it depends. I don't think so. In a few years, some people are saying no. So I'm hearing Francis is saying, I don't think so. Abiba says emphatic no. Monica, not at all. I believe AI cannot replace us. No, blended. Okay, so this is great. And maybe in parts, I can't see it happening. There are some aspects. I like that, Ken, hybrid. I can't see it happening, says Adebiyi Oladipo. Amanda says maybe in parts. Okay, so, but it's something that we need to reflect on, because every day we are seeing a lot of things that facilitators are doing now, especially in the area of intelligence gathering, that AI can do even better. But then it looks as if we're going to need a lot of handshaking between AI and the rest of us that are facilitators. I thank you for the opportunity. Okay. Yeah, I'm done. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Peter?
Yes, I can hear you very well, but I
Very
cannot
good.
see Neka again.
Neka. All right.
Well,
Thanks.
we need to share the results of the polls if we can, and that would be very nice if we can. Thank you.
I think now we're going to take questions from the audience.
So what I would suggest is that if you have questions, maybe you put it in the chat box, and then between myself and Kelvin, we will just we'll just take the answers to the one that is relevant to us.
Yes, so if you have questions for either me or Peter, please place them in the chat, in the discussion. And if the question is for Peter, he will answer. And if the question is for me, I will answer.
All right. So this is Francis. Let me just indicate, Peter, that the poll results are out. If you click polls, you will see the results, and I think everybody should click on polls, and you will see the outcome of the polls.
So how do we do that?
There's a button on the right-hand side from the chat room. You go to polls, then you have the leave button. So if you click on polls, it shows the results of the poll.
Yeah, he said no active poll to vote. That's what he said.
So I see it. So let me go through the outcome.
Okay.
All right.
And what I'm going to do, Peter, I'm sorry, Peter, I was just going to say I have a question that came in. And so while we're working that out, I'll go ahead and answer that question if that's okay.
Please go ahead.
And the question is from Amanda. So thank you for your question, Amanda. I went off camera so that I could actually read the question in the chat. And I just lost Amanda's question. Where is it?
Yeah, you need to scroll.
Yeah, I lost it. I just had your question. I think so. Amanda, your question was around what do we do?
I can read it for you.
Thank you, Peter. What is Amanda asking?
Customizing and aligning course content. Oh, is that for you or for me?
Oh no, I got it. Okay.
Okay.
What do you do if your organization has not quite got the setup for data reporting, like Salesforce? Okay, so Amanda's question is, what do you do if your organization, and I'm going to go back on camera. So Amanda's question is, what do you do if your organization is not quite set up for data, like a Salesforce? So I think that what you have to do then, Amanda, is take the charge, take the lead, be courageous, and be the one who leads the effort for getting the data infrastructure in place that you need to answer the question, what is the impact of training and learning, and use data to do that, right? So there are organizations that don't have the data infrastructure. And really, it's not up to the training organization to do that, right? We can partner with parts of the business where there is the expertise for data engineering and data setup and data analytics. That's a partnership that we can build so that we can put the data in place that supports us in answering the question, what is the impact of training and learning? So that's not an easy answer to your question, Amanda. Unfortunately, I don't have a magic wand. But the reality is that if your organization does not have the data setup or the data infrastructure, the best advice I can tell you is to not try to do it on your own. And not only that, getting a data infrastructure in place is not only important and helpful to L&D, but it's important and helpful to other parts of the organization as well. So that's why you can build partnerships across the business that are coming together to help build a data infrastructure, not only to help you answer questions about the impact of training and learning, but to help other parts of the organization answer questions that they have that can be answered by data as well. So my long answer to your question, Amanda, what do you do if you don't have data infrastructure? Partner with different parts of the business who have a vested interest in having a data infrastructure as well. That's my answer, Amanda.
All right.
Okay, thanks a lot,
very
Kevin.
much. Thanks very much, Kevin. There's another question, but let me quickly do the poll, if you don't mind, Peter.
Okay, go ahead, please.
And then we can close that chapter. All right. So relatively, as at now, 58.06% of the respondents chose customizing and aligning course content to learning objectives. 22.58% gave knowing as much as possible when learners pre-course delivery. And then 12.9% selected ensuring that nobody is left behind during delivery. And of course, last but not the least, 6.45% talked about leveraging on new discoveries about learners in class. So that's the result of the polls.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll just share a few thoughts around that. First of all, you'll notice that deliberately we ensure that you cannot pick more than one option, and that's deliberate. It's very difficult because you actually need every element along that value chain. What AI will be able to do is to help you to optimize all of that. And so if I'm getting information at the pre-course level, AI will be able to synthesize that for me and present it in a manner that will be helpful for me to be able to do the kinds of things I want to do in class. That's number one. Number two, AI will also help me to ensure that I align my course content with the objectives that we have agreed with the client. And so those two alone have pushed me beyond 60-65% in terms of achieving the kind of results that we deliver.
Okay.
However, the rest will happen dynamically inside the classroom. And this is where the assistant comes in, which may be very difficult for the human person to do on an ongoing basis. But AI, if it's well curated, will make you look like a star. And that's what this is all about. Okay? So thank you, everybody, for that.
Thanks, Peter. All right. So let me quickly go and read the next question.
Okay.
Just
there is one for Isioma. I can see that.
So this one is from Tunji Afolabi.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
And it says, with the slow adoption of technology in Africa for learning, aren't we concerned that this will affect our pace with the rest of the world?
Peter, I have a thought about what Tunji is asking, and then I certainly want to hear from you as well. So team, what Tunji is asking is whether or not the slow adoption of technology for learning in Africa is a concern, and if it's going to put the country behind the rest of the world. And here's the reality, Tunji. I don't want you to get the idea that the rest of the world is so much ahead of Africa in learning technology. Yeah. I don't want you to think that, because the reality is that from country to country, from business to business, organization to organization, different countries, different organizations are at different places when it comes to how they are using not only learning technology, but how they're using data and analytics and AI, the things that Peter was talking about. So it may appear that the rest of the world is a little further ahead, but that's not true. You know, again, different organizations and different places in the world are at different places in this journey of learning technology and this journey of learning analytics and measurement and data. I see it all the time. I'm fortunate to be able to speak around the world and work with many organizations around the world. So again, what I really want to leave you with, Tunji, is don't get the idea that the motherland, my motherland, is so much further behind than anyone else, because it's not. Peter, what do you think?
I absolutely agree with you, Kelvin. And I would like to share a couple of things with you. in the last 6 months, my young team members have been able to do things that I will never have even been able to dream of. We've had the technology, the IVR, which is the interactive voice response, which is mostly used for customer service around the world. And we've just finished developing that. And 2 hours ago, they started the testing, the live testing of that, to be able to teach, not just in English, but in Yoruba, in Hausa, in Pidgin, in several languages. And this technology has been in existence for a decade, yet nobody has thought of innovating around it. That is just being done currently. And this is in Nigeria, not in the US. Secondly, there are quite a number of things. You see, when I see folks in Lagos that will, even 2-3-year-olds, they pick a device and they can do things that you cannot even imagine. Let me tell you, technology is a leveler. And once you put it in the hands of these young kids, they do wonders. So definitely for me, we are definitely not behind at all.
Those kids are better at it than we are, Peter, because they can pick it up and know what to do with it immediately.
And they don't need the manual to be able to do that.
Right. So Tunji, I think that what both Peter and I are saying is, don't believe that Africa is further behind than anyone else, because that's not true.
Correct. Now, I'd like to...
No, Peter, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to quickly answer Isioma Tomi's question around what kind of data you need to be able to gather from students to be able to make the AI works better for you, the assistants. In the last 5 years or 6 years, we process applications, which required us to get online applications, get our markers to go through, read all those questions and the answers, and then create the application. Now, in the last 3 months, we have actually been training the machine to be able to understand how we do the marking. And then, all of a sudden, we are gathering data on how the machine is marking. We are comparing it over the next 3 months with how humans are marking. And then, in another, let's say, 6 months, we are going to switch over. So when we have data like, let's say, application worth 100,000, we can ask the machine to mark it down to 10,000. And then we can get humans to do it. I think the point is that no matter the data you have, you can always start from there. I will recommend data that you gathered for 3 months and thereabout, it just gets better. So don't wait until it is perfect. You can always improve the data and your AI gets better and better and better.
Good. Any question?
Peter and I love questions. Give us some more.
Okay.
What questions do you have for Peter and I about data and artificial intelligence and the future of technology and the future of measuring impact?
So, Kelvin, I think there is one for you. Okay. I'm not sure if you answered it. Is that what do you? Oh God, it's it's around Salesforce.
Yeah, I answered that question.
Okay, you answered that already. Yes, it's true. Okay.
There's a question for newbies in AI. There's a question from Habiba for newbies in AI. How did they get their feedback very quickly?
Can you read it out, please?
Oh, okay, newbies. So she says suggestions for newbies to get their feet wet in terms of AI. So I guess that's AI as regards learning and development.
Okay, so Abiba, thanks for that. The reality is that I'm also a newbie. I have never worked with AI in my life. And all the people that I've been working with in the last six months or so, they also are newbies. But there is one common thing amongst all of us. We are hungry to learn, hungry to explore. And because of that, we just make things happen. In the last 2 weeks, I can tell you, there are some I've not slept because I had these 3 young people that were trying to crack something. And we only cracked it 12 midnight yesterday. Everybody went to sleep. We were so happy. And this morning, we started to operate it. You know, there's a lot of things. Just get into, I would call it the ecosystem or the network. And you will be shocked that whatever you are thinking about, somebody else is also thinking about it. And together, you can create an innovative solution. You don't need to know how to write it. Just have the overall architecture, and you will be part of the solution. That's what I would say.
Peter, I'm going to add to that as well. You said something very important. Your last point, it starts with curiosity. It starts with being interested. We don't always have all the answers. Even as the L&D detective, I don't always have all the answers. But I'm curious, and I'm always looking for the answers. So don't get frustrated if you don't believe you're at a place today where you should be in terms of your capability and your knowledge with artificial intelligence and data and technology. Just continue to be curious, continue to be interested, and grow into the level of expertise or competency to which you aspire. But don't be discouraged. Just continue to grow, learn, be curious, be interested. Sometimes you'll be successful, sometimes you won't. But I found personally that the times that I have been most successful with data are the times where I totally screwed up. And that's where I learned the most.
Correct. That I cannot agree with you more. Honestly speaking, last week I was super frustrated. I was super frustrated. But within a week, we crossed that crescendo, and today all that is behind us, and we are moving ahead again. I'm sure in another 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to go through another valley. But then.
Okay, so finally, gentlemen, there's an issue about ethics. Ethical implications of AI, if you could quickly address that.
But we also need to wrap up. Apparently, everybody else has gone for the closing ceremony, unfortunately.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yes, we're behind time. There's so many questions, but unfortunately, we cannot take everything. But I would suggest that we continue the conversation on social media, especially on Twitter. So it's LND Conf 2020. Let's just take the conversation there. And I know Kevin and Banky are very active on Twitter and LinkedIn. So just follow them. Kevin has dropped off his website, I think, and he had a free kit he's offering as well. So we can follow and continue the conversation. And I think continue being curious and courageous as we learn and as we wrap our head around AI, data, and what it can do for all of us in the L&D space. But it's been very, very interesting. And I think we should continue this conversation. So thank you so much, Kevin and Peter, for your time. Thank you, Francis, my co-pilot, for moderating. And let's keep the conversation going. Definitely, there's no going back. It's data and AI for the future so that we can make more impact and see more impact and make sure that learning does occur. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Detective.
Bye, everybody.
Detective Kelvin.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Detective Kevin.
Bye-bye. Peter.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So you have to leave now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. We got to go. We got to go. Okay, bye-bye.